What was your finest moment of revenge? When I was 11 years old, I was bullied by a 12-year-old boy. He would steal things from my lunch every day. I got sick of it and decided to do something about it. One day, I brought a super hot pepper in my lunch and pretended to be really excited about it. Sure enough, the boy comes over, snatches it from my hands, and pops it in his mouth. He practically exploded in pain, writhing around the floor, unable to handle the heat. I calmly looked at him and told him that drinking a nice glass of cold water would help immensely. He did so. This promptly magnified the pain 100 times. He never stole food from me again. I regret nothing. Driving to drop someone off, my radar detector went off. Saw a cop sitting in a parking lot. Dropped off my friend and headed back. The whole way, some butt is tailgating me. Speed limit is 40. I'm doing 45 and he's so close I can see his headlights. We come up to a traffic circle and he tries to pass me on the right. I sped up and he kept trying. We hit about 80 to 90 with him on the shoulder. Come up the crest of a hill and I know the cop is right on the other side. I hit the brakes and he flew up over the hill, had to be doing 90 in a 40. I even stopped to let the cop out of the parking spot. Most satisfying thing ever. My first real boyfriend, we kissed instead of just holding hands, kissed another girl and dumped me for her when I was a freshman in high school. She had actively pursued him, although she knew he had a girlfriend, so I blamed her rather than him. I know. Fast forward 4 years. I was a volleyball player throughout college. In the off-season, I played in a city women's league and a co-ed league as an outside hitter. My team played a new team with a familiar face. She didn't recognize me, different high schools, but I immediately recognized her. My team's setter kept giving me amazing sets and I kept slamming the ball over the net, just waiting for my shot. Finally, she was in the back row and my setter set me up. I hit the ball and the boyfriend stealer stepped into the hit. It bounced off her foot and went straight up into her face and broke her nose. This may seem small, but it was the most satisfying thing I have ever done. When I was in the 7th grade, I sat behind a jerk who hated me and enjoyed being annoying. Every single goddamn day, he would lean back in his chair and hit the front of my desk over and over again. If I was trying to write something, he would do it even harder. So one day, I decided enough was enough, and in the middle of a lesson, he started again. So I waited, and right as he was leaning his chair back fast, trying to knock my desk hard, I pulled it back. Without my desk behind him, his chair tipped right over and he hit the ground hard. I can still clearly remember him whispering, "You B," beneath the laughter of the whole class and the teacher yelling at him to get up. The look on his face was a mixture of shock, embarrassment, and pure rage as he looked up at me from the floor. Bastard never effed with me again. A crappy repair shop in Moab, Utah messed up our car, which left us stranded in a nearby national park. We called and demanded they tow the vehicle in, and while they said they'd come get us, they never did. When we talked with park rangers, they were quite familiar with the shop, the biggest in town and with a terrible reputation. We were on our honeymoon and had more time on our hands than I imagine most travelers do. We went to the shop, demanded a full refund, and when they refused, we sat out front on the curb in our camp chairs for 2 days with homemade protest signs. I was overwhelmed with the support we got from locals who honked and waved, stopped and chatted with us, and shared their own stories of horror. The owner called the cops on us, but the joke was on him. We'd already notified the police we'd be protesting, and were well within our rights in doing so. In the end, the shop owner refunded all our money and left visibly distressed when we told him that even with the refund, we weren't sure we were ready to leave town. Eventually we did, but not before filing complaints with the Better Business Bureau and every review site we could find. They'd already been booted from the Chamber of Commerce. We ended up becoming friends with an awesome local mechanic and having a great story to tell. Justice was served, and without a tinge of guilt. When I was 12 years old, a kid beat me up at a birthday party for reasons unknown. 4 years later, the kid is a pitcher, and a very good one at that, for his school in the playoffs. I was playing for the other team. After going 0-3 to start the game, I hit a walk-off home run off him to advance to the next round. Kid actually started crying on the mound. I don't think I've ever had a bigger smile than I did in that moment. Still have the ball in my apartment at college. Beating the crap out of the man who abused and beat my mother for 6 years. 7 years later, and she still has no idea. Edit. Obligatory thanks for the gold, stranger. Recently posted this, but, long story short, a kid I was friends with hit me in the balls 3 times in one night. He then called me a wee baby and got in my face. He tried to make me flinch by half swinging at me. I didn't flinch, but instead headbutted him with everything I had, crushed his nose, blood pouring out of his face. I had a tiny cut in the center of my forehead, with one line of blood running down my face. I looked effing psychotic, but bad A. Also, F you for that, David. When I was a kid, probably 4 or 5 years old, I was watching Dumbo with my neighbor. The elephants on parade part was scary as all hell to me back then, and I peed my pants. My neighbor told everyone in my pre-K class and would not stop calling me the pants peer for weeks. Finally, one day I slept over at her house and took a pair of her pants out of the closet, put them on, and peed in them. I woke her up to show her, and that's the story of how I became the 2 times pants peer. TLDR got revenge on a girl by putting her pants on and peeing in them. I ground up laxatives and tainted all my kitchen fridge food with it to figure out which of my 7 roommates was eating all my food, while I survived off a secret stash in my mini fridge. I found out who did it very, very quickly. I closed on selling my house, but the buyers were real a-holes, insane demands and stupid crap. I was fed up, so on move-out day, I bought a couple of wasp traps and put the attractant into a hole in the garage drywall. Effers. Telling a group of baseball buddies that were picking on my younger brother that Snape kills Dumbledore in Half-Blood Prince after realizing they had all just started it. Edit. Thanks for the gold. Expect a comment from you/thejesticle. My college roommate had a sketchy friend he would invite over. My textbook was stolen the weekend before my final. I went to the bookstore and found the book. I had note cards that I used as bookmarks still in the book. I texted my roommate's friend and made up a story that the bookstore was going to press charges unless he gave the money back. He confessed over the phone and told me to meet him at his place to get the money. When I got there, he was smoking a bong. After taking the money, I poured the bong over his head and told him to never come to my place ever again. Back in the summer of '09, me and my girlfriend were going pretty strong. Anyway, I found out she was effing this guy on the side. She admitted it and said she was sorry, and I dumped her. Anyway, I didn't know the guy, but I remembered his name. One night at a party a few months later, I got introduced to a guy I thought was him. I slyly worked out it was him. I'm not a guy to hold a grudge generally, but this was something else. I didn't want to do anything to him, but when I walked into a bedroom to take a phone call, and there he was passed out drunk on the bed. I didn't know what to do, but I knew I had too good an opportunity to pass it up. I was pretty drunk at the time, but the first thing I thought of was to take a dump on him. I passed it off as a stupid idea, but I couldn't think of anything else, so I went with it. I left the party just after and haven't seen or heard from him since. Not a day goes by I don't think about it. Needless to say, I haven't told anyone about this in real life. I'm not sure, but is say vengeance was a dish best served crappy. When I was 16, I was heartbroken by a girl who basically decided to F someone else after we were in love, and I just used it as motivation to eat better and lose weight. I saw her a couple years later, and it looked like she gained as much as I lost, 80 pounds. Felt so good. Ex cheated on me, moved out, but moved out slowly over time, which meant I still lived with a lot of her stuff. Some of her clothes were left in the closet. I cut teeny tiny corners off every sleeve, but barely enough to be noticeable. You'd have to think you were going insane to notice it, but then again, over time, each sleeve did look somewhat off. She eventually asked me about it months later. I denied everything. I regret nothing. There was the kid in junior high that was always in my crap. Not a bully, but just 2 parts D-head and 1 part B. Constantly trolling me, following me around, talking crap. I tried turning the other cheek, being nice and crap like that, but it was just not working. Fast forward to high school, we are both on the wrestling team. I'm like 1 weight class above him, so we have lots and lots of close contact, and he was still being a D. Double leg takedown. Scooped that crap head up in the air and dented the mat with him. Coach got peed and made me do extra cardio after practice. Felt really effing good. During our 100 multiple choice law exam, I wrote all my answers on the original exam page and colored in wrong answers on the Scantron sheet. The girl who copied me since day 1 thought she was going to pass this exam worth 30% of our final mark. She looked over and copied almost each of my Scantron answer, then guessed a few, handed it in, and left for the winter break. I erased all my old answers, put the correct answers in, handed it in, and left. I got 71 out of 100 and barely managed to pass that class. I'll find out what she got on Tuesday when I maybe see her with a gun at my locker. When I was in 4th grade, I was pushed around a lot by a kid who thought he was hot crap. I told my parents, I told my teacher, they told the teacher and the principal, no avail. So one day on the stairs, he kicks the back of my shoe, making it pop off and fall. I turn and punch him in the stomach. He keeled over and rolled/fell down about 5 to 6 stairs to the next landing. I didn't even get in trouble, and even though he is still an a-hole, he never dared to touch me again. So my grandfather was driving, and an obviously drunk man threw a rock and shattered his windshield. My grandfather talked to him and told him, "If you give me your real number, I'll only have you pay for half of the windshield, or we can figure something out." The guy turned out to give him a fake number. A year later, my grandfather picks up a guy from Park and Ride, carpooling. He happens to be the man that shattered his windshield. They're driving on the freeway and the guy doesn't recognize him. He's being rude and talking on his phone. My grandpa asks to see his phone and throws it out the window. The guy freaks out and my grandpa goes, "Remember me?" He then made him get out of the car. Canadian Air Cadets summer camp got picked on and things stolen from by one other cadet with issues for duration of the camp. Was allowed to go buy sundries at a local pharmacy once a week. On final day of camp, we did precision parade drills for friends, family, dignitaries, etc. Sort of like graduating from boot camp. A formal event where we were expected to be at our best. Swapped the contents of a package of chiclets for packets of Phenamint, laxative gum. Sure enough, Bully takes the gum as I open the package in front of him. A while later, we are called up for drill. Since it was hot and in full uniform, if we experienced exhaustion or were about to faint, we were to drop to one knee and wait till we'd taken out a formation. He and one other guy dropped to one knee partway through. I don't know if he crapped himself, but I'd like to think he did. My friend Roman had just bought a brand new shiny bike. We were taking it for a spin around the neighborhood and stopped off at my woman's house. We left the bikes on her big porch and went inside. Not 5 minutes later, we went outside and my friend's new bike was missing. We promptly hop in my car and start to search Eugene for the bikes. After about an hour, we were giving up and thought we'd better check the central bus station one last time. Sure enough, there was 16-year, roughly, with my friend's bike and stickers already removed. We pulled over and confronted him. He said he found the bike in a ditch and promptly handed it back. I was putting the bike in the car while my friend fumed and looked up this kid up and down. Right as we were about to head out, he yells, "Give me effing jacket." He made the kid give him the jacket he was wearing is punishment for stealing the bike. We ended up finding lipstick, a camera with some unusual selfies, and some other random things in the pockets. It was a nice rugged Carhartt jacket. To this day, my friend still uses it. I found out my GF was cheating on me, so I moved out. I kept my copy of the apartment key for a while after, and I'd go over when she wasn't home and pass small but worthwhile amounts of urine into her collection of shoes, and swirl the toilet with both toothbrushes by the bathroom sink. A friend of mine had been seriously third-wheeling me with a certain girl that I was into. I asked why, and he said it was fair game. May the best man win. So I decided to find him another suitable partner. I went on to Omegle, typed gay into preferences, met a slew of lovely middle-aged men who wanted my KIK and thus gave them his. He received pictures of butts, D's, and 44-year-old men wanting to let daddy see you. In my eyes, justice was served finally. No regrets. I got in a fight with one of my friends when I was about 12 or so. We were in a heated argument, and I decided enough is enough, so I picked up some seaweed with a stick from the nearby creek and threw that crap on her head. Oh, sweet justice. My friend's ex. She was quite the bee and deserved to be dumped. She treated my friend like crap and saw him as nothing more than a pair of lips. After they broke up, she refused to talk to us. Fast forward 2 months, she's still a bit bitter at most of our group, with the exception of me. She wanted me. So she asks me out. That's when I came up with a brilliant plan. In order to put as much distance between her and me, along with making her feel extremely uncomfortable, we decided that everyone would just so conveniently be at the movie theater when we were on our date. This included her ex and his current GF. Look on her face when she was essentially flash mobbed and completely ignored for the night was priceless. There was a teacher that I hated in middle school, and he hated me just as much. One day I noticed that one of the magazines in our classroom had his address on it. I wrote it down and waited until summer vacation so it would be less suspicious. I went to Borders and got a bunch of magazine subscription inserts and had a close friend who went to another school fill them out with his information. I checked the bill me later and sent them out. When I got back to school the next year, I could tell he suspected me but couldn't prove it, and I was happy because I didn't have any classes with him anymore. My ex said she'd call the cops on me for confronting her repeatedly about having stolen and rehoming my cat. So I went home and called the cops on her. Found out what she did with my cat after that. My younger sister is a huge pain, always got me in trouble. I took her Harry Potter books, scribbled out Snape's name, and wrote Alan Rickman in every instance. I think she still cries about it. About a month ago, I found out my coworker, a good friend of mine, was cheating with my GF at the time. Teamed up with a few other work buddies and decided to teach him a lesson. We went to a Korean mart and bought 2 frozen raw fishes. With the help of one of my buddies, I was able to get a hold of his car keys. So we hid one of those 2 fish we bought earlier in a place which would be pretty obvious and easy to notice. And we duct taped the other fish underneath his passenger side seat. He did find one of the fish and was pretty mad with us. Here's the sweet revenge, though. He kept complaining that he just couldn't get rid of the fish smell from his car even though he cleaned his car with shampoo, and has used all kinds of car scent. I quit that work a few days after, so I don't know if he found the other fish yet. The bully who played a large part in my anorexia asking me out in college, not realizing who I was. I shot him down hard and told him how he affected me. He scoffed it off, but looked really sad every time he saw me. Back in high school, the senior football players egged my dog. She was outside, house, and car. I had a few bros over, and we ended up inviting some of the prettier girls from my school over. Football players didn't approve of them being at my house and drove by egging and yelled "F you" at me. They also egged the girls' cars that were at my house. I felt embarrassed that this happened to them at my house. I knew which car they drove because of the yelling idiot and recognized the car. My friend and I hopped in my car and bought around 100 eggs to take our revenge. We hit the driver's house first and all of his friends' cars parked around the house. Then we went out looking for them, ended up meeting them on your average 2-way street, leaned out the window and absolutely pelted them while we were both heading opposite ways. They got out and yelled, and I stuck my middle finger out the window and we rode into the distance. It didn't cause any problems to the girls or myself after that. I was in the locker room in high school gym class, hiding in the back because I had to call my mother about something ASAP. Just as I'm listening to the recording, this kid who had been a longtime bully to me came over and started taunting me with his usual threats. As I was leaving the message, in which I did not want him taunting me in the background, I kicked him as hard as I could. I aimed for his stomach, but he reacted and somehow managed to get himself kicked in the balls instead. He looked at me in shock and amusement and ran away. I managed to finish the message without faltering once. Not long after this, I happened to be at the DMV with the same kid and both of our fathers, both of us testing to get our permits. I passed.